Hi, I'm Andy Billings. I'm a professor in the Department of Journalism and Creative Media here at the University of Alabama, and it's my honor to introduce to you your next speaker. When I first met her, she was in high school. She stopped by my office and we had a discussion about women in sports media, how to bolster visibility and how to decrease all of the stereotypes that they might face. She's here to talk more about that several years later. And I'm excited. I hope you are too. It's my great honor to introduce to you Martha Glen Sease.
Starting off our night with my revolutionary idea, which is that we were watching women's sports wrong. Now I know what y'all are thinking. Oh my goodness, we just finished playing Kahoot. We're like 15 minutes into this event. What is this girl talking about? Telling me that I don't know how to watch sports. Well, basically, I just believe that we can watch women's sports better. Firstly, I think that we can watch women's sports more often, but secondly, and more importantly, I think that we can view women's sports through a different lens and set ourselves up to more fully enjoy them. Now, before I kind of dive deeper into this topic, I want to go ahead and tell you a little bit about me. So, my name is Martha Glen. As I mentioned, I'm a junior from Montgomery, Alabama. I am studying news media with a concentration in sports media. And a fun fact about me is that I have over 20 nicknames. People forget double names or they don't quite understand them. And so, I've got a lot of alternatives. So, I respond to just about anything. Now, as Dr. Billings mentioned, this is a topic that I've cared a lot about for a very long time. I've done a lot of research into it. And so I had to kind of pick a point in this story to drop everyone into this Tide Talk tonight. And so, actually, where I'm going to begin tonight is with a freshman friendship, a toddler, and a podcast. So, as you will see on the left here, this is a screenshot from some text messages exchanged in the spring semester of my freshman year with my buddy Sam. Now, Sam is here tonight, and we started our friendship in freshman year. We both realized that we really liked soccer, and we really enjoyed discussing soccer together. And so, originally, we were talking a lot about soccer, a lot about the US men's national team, and mostly how we were really disappointed with their recent performance. They were not doing too well. They had failed to qualify for the World Cup. And this is where the toddler comes in. So the toddler on screen here is named Cassius. Cassius, Sam and I believe, may or may not be the future of the US men's national team. Both of his parents are professional soccer players for the US, and we just really do think that he might be the future of the team. That is a little beside the point, though. But so we're talking about Cassius, we're talking about the US men's national team, and I decide to start bringing up the women's national team in our conversations. I figured that's a well-known team. Sam probably knows about them. The Women's World Cup is coming up this summer, and they're really good. And I was proven right, by the way, because they won their 4th World Cup that summer. So we start talking more about women's soccer, and I say, okay, I'm going to get a little more adventurous here. I'm going to bring up Alabama soccer. Now, the University of Alabama is one of a couple of schools that actually only has a women's soccer team. There's no men's team. So I bring it up. Sam is still talking with me about it, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, he only gets to talk about women's soccer if we're talking about Alabama, so who knows, but let's just start grabbing random people and going to games. So we fast forward, we're in the fall of our sophomore year, and we're doing just that. We're bringing buddies to games, we're having fun, and then we fast forward again, and it's the fall of 2020, my junior year here, and I am working for WVUA 90.7 FM, The Capstone, and I am covering Alabama soccer. So I'm going to the games, I'm reporting, but then I also was hosting a weekly podcast called The Through Ball, to offer a little bit more analysis and then just further my coverage. And so at some point pretty early in the semester or in the season, I sent Sam a text and I said, hey, I think it might be kind of fun if you came on as a guest. What do you think about it? And I immediately was terrified because his response was, that sounds fun. I'm kind of an unsolicited takes kind of guy. So I was like, oh my gosh, this could go horribly, but it's not live, so it's okay. If it goes poorly, I can re-record it. So then Sam comes on and he starts talking about how technical Kaylee Verpail is on the ball and how, pretty the runs that some of the people choose to take down the field are, or how accurate Cat Rogers' service delivery is on corner kicks. And I realized 3 years into our friendship that Sam is actually the ideal end result of this problem. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, we don't know how to watch women's sports. Basically, There is an argument that there is an inferior and there is a superior when it comes to sports. And this is based on the presence of testosterone. So the argument is essentially when you look at NBA, WNBA, men's soccer, men's tennis, women's tennis, the presence of testosterone means that men are scientifically faster and stronger, and therefore their sport is better. The women's version is boring because they have more estrogen. Now, what fails to be taken into account is that the presence of extra estrogen actually means that there are other advantages that female athletes have. So they're typically more flexible and they have more endurance. And so we don't watch women's sports to set ourselves up to fully enjoy them as we could. So we're not watching a WNBA game focusing on, okay, Sue Bird is going to do this crazy technical no-look pass over her shoulder to set up a layup in the paint. We're just watching to see if the ball gets moved up and down the court as fast and with as much physicality as it does in an NBA game. Okay, so obviously we need to watch women's sports differently because different things happen. That seems pretty obvious. So why is this a problem? Well, it's a problem because we don't know how to discuss women's sports. So a lot of the times the focus when we're talking about women's sports are on the personal lives of the athletes or the outfits, not necessarily the technicality that they play with, or it's discussed that they're not as interesting because stronger, faster equals better, and they don't have testosterone or they don't have as much as men. So how could they be better? How could they be more interesting? Well, we should be discussing the different things that happen within the game. So here I have a picture of Serena Williams in the Australian Open. This just happened last weekend. And then she's in her wonderful cat suit that Nike designed that's based off of FloJo, and everybody talked a lot about it. It's a cool outfit, I get it, hot pink, sure. But what people didn't talk as much about was the amazing defense that she played in this tournament. Typically, when we discuss Serena Williams and we discuss her tennis, we talk about one of a few things. We talk about her emotions. She's a very passionate player. We talk about her outfits. She's got wonderful fashion. And then we talk about her serve, her offense. Now, why do we talk about her serve? It's because it is fast and powerful. Again, stronger, faster is better. But we should be talking about the incredible athletic feats that she pulls off, like she did in the Australian Open, with these insane defensive plays that require a lot of presence of mind within the game, strategy, physicality, and just like flexibility and endurance. I mean, she plays offense and defense. That's the argument that people use when they're trying to compare all the GOATs. So, okay, we've recognized that it's a problem. We've recognized why. So who can we look to as a role model? Well, we don't have a wonderful role model in the booth right now. And I'm actually doing some research into this, so if you have more questions, you can come back in like a year. It's not going to be ready until then, but I do have a resource right here that I've been kind of using for some of my research, which is actually a study that Dr. Billings, who introduced me, conducted revolving around the 2000 NCAA men's and women's Final Four basketball tournament. And so as you'll see, there's a lot more direct language used to just get to the point and say what you mean about men's sports that's not necessarily used in women's. So we have that going for us, but then we also have the whole stronger, faster is better lens that everybody talks about and views sports through. So a casual fan, think about this. When you turn on ESPN, if it's a sport that you don't know, who do you rely on? You rely on the commentators, the play-by-play and the color commentators to explain what's happening, especially if you're a casual fan. So if you're a casual fan of women's sports and you turn on the TV and they're not talking about, the technicality, the grace, the physicality that's in a different way than the men's, if they're still just talking about stronger, faster is better, you have no shot at fully enjoying these games. So let's go back to Sam. And I know what y'all are thinking, oh my gosh, you just told us there's this huge problem, there's not this great role model. Why are you inflating this guy's ego? You told us he's here. Well, I do want to just take a minute and inform everybody that though he was a recurring guest on my podcast, he is on a temporary probation. He predicted that the women were going to win the SEC tournament and then make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. And then they proceeded to get knocked out in the first round. So I'm like Michael Scott. I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. So he's got to prove that he's not bad luck before he can come back on this semester. Which, by the way, maybe he's a step closer because the women's team did just win 1-0. So, anyways, there's this whole problem, and then there's a chicken and egg debate with broadcast networks about, well, do we have an audience for women's sports in the first place to broadcast and sell merch for? And the answer right now is we don't have a casual fan base. We have a diehard fan base and then really no one. And this is because we don't know how to view women's sports to fully enjoy them. So we're going to have to eat the elephant one bite at a time. And this is not a threat to Big Al, it's just a saying. But so how do we do that? What's the first bite? Well, let me give you an example that I have taken in my life. So Sam, who's pictured here, and then my roommate, who is also pictured here, Allie, we really love basketball. We love Alabama basketball. Our men's team is so good right now. They're projected to be a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. But we can't go to games because we have to opt in for tickets. They're very hard to get. We cannot get to the men's games. What we can do is just walk into the women's games. All that's required is a mask and you swipe your ACT card. And so Sam and Allie and I did that in mid-January. We walked into a women's basketball game. We had a lot of fun. We watched them beat Auburn. We got to hang out with Big Al, avoid homework for a little bit, watch Araya Copeland, Jasmine Walker, the whole team just do their thing, see some really great basketball, and it was wonderful. So we have to think of it as this grassroots movement where we are all speaking with each other, like Sam speaks on my podcast about the grace and the subtleties and everything that happen in women's sports that don't always happen in men's sports. Now, this is not to say that neither thing can happen in either sport, but just typically we need to talk more about the grace and the flexibility and their endurance and the technicality that you don't always see above the physicality of the men's game. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, here's some next steps that I think everybody can take. First of all, just have a conversation about women's sports. Discuss it in this way. Talk about all of the things that we've been talking about tonight. Don't only talk about stronger, faster is better. And then also watch women's sports through that different lens. Set yourself up to fully enjoy the game. Also, you can follow people who report on women's sports this way. There's so many resources, even just within the University of Alabama student body. You can follow me on Twitter. There are wonderful reporters at the Crimson White. There are wonderful reporters alongside myself at 90.7 FM and at Tide 100.9. You have the resources at your fingertips. And if you only take one thing away from this talk tonight, and I hope you don't, I hope you take away a couple of points, but if you only take away one, I hope it's this. Please just go to a women's sports game or stream it, either way, but just go to a game. Watch it through this lens. I've attached here a calendar of all of Alabama Athletics' upcoming women's sports events. Pick one, watch it on TV, go to it in person, but just really set yourself up to fully enjoy it. Thank you very much.